there are so many more children like me who are still today losing out on those opportunities. I have always maintained that decisions are neither wrong nor right. You have to make them right. What are the possible pathways? And that's why I always use the word possible pathways, because I may have planned something amazing on a paper, and the moment it hits the real world, you know that things will change. You have to grow in life. You have to really enable a lot of things. You have to trust other people. Do you want to grow the organization, or do you want to scale the idea?
Hi, welcome to the Exchange podcast, where we explore journeys of change and inspiration across our ecosystem. Today I have with me Khushbu Avasthi and Ashcharya Prabhu. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Ash, go first.
Hi, my name is Ashcharya Prabhu and I work at C4EC and Leaders Lab Network.
Hello, my name is Khushbu Avasthi. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer at Shiksha Lokam, which is one of the missions that work on enabling education leadership in the country. Personally, I come from one of the eastern states in the country called Bihar. And it's a pretty small town where I grew up. And so it's been quite an amazing journey from coming from Bihar to now seeding these two wonderful organizations that's working at scale, trying to improve the education equity scenario in the country.
Oh, wow. Khushbu, you said you come from a small town in Bihar. And I know then it was an extremely patriarchal society. Now, after facing all the challenges and despite all the odds, you are right now a role model for a lot of young entrepreneurs. And I would want to touch upon saying that a lot of female women and female-bodied entrepreneurs. So how was it for you, like growing up in those circumstances, especially with related to your education? The second part of that question would be who or what kept you going? What was your inspiration around that time?
So I was growing up in Bihar in the 90s, and definitely it was patriarchal society. Even today, largely it is. Mm-hmm. But I think 90s was a special decade because Bihar as a geography, socio-politically, it was not a very safe space. The society is patriarchal. So anyways, there are norms set for a woman to say what you can do, what you can't do. Second, because the socio-political environment was unsafe, the boundaries just became far more stricter. I don't remember growing up ever spending time outside of home after 5 p.m. And for me, as a child, and for so many of girls like me, that's how the world worked. Like that was the norm in my head that, hey, girls are supposed to behave like this. And yes, for every single small thing that people may think that is normal and people can just get access to it. I mean, going out in a park to, staying back in school after school hours to just hang out with friends. I don't think I ever did it. For small things, you have to always kind of hustle. You have to show up. I think at that point in time, it was a lot of limiting environment. But as of today, I feel those experiences did shape me as a person, as person who has to find the pathways despite the constraints. Right. And I think the biggest learning growing up, and now when I reflect on it, Ashcharya, is that no matter how bleak the circumstances, you'll always find champions. Right. For me, growing up, that person was my mother. Oh. And I think I can't thank her enough because in my family, I'm the first girl in my family to actually go for higher education. Wow. I'm the first girl in my family to actually take up a job. I'm the first one to obviously be an entrepreneur in the family. But I think all these began with those small steps, and those small steps were enabled by my mom. Whether it was about, no, my girl would actually go for a professional course. And also I think a lot of leadership lessons that now, I take it for granted. I think it goes back to my growing up years where I feel how you have to find those small wins. Nobody will come and change your life upside down. Correct. You have to find those small pathways, those rays of hope, and always look out for champions. And those are 3-4 things that I've always kept it close to my heart even today in my leadership decisions.
Now you are being the champion for a lot of young folks. I'm curious to know your journey. So what happened? You did say higher education. So what happened next? And what were the sparks that led you to start Shiksha Lokam and Mantra for Change? And I know that there was this uncomfortable feeling that you sat with or that kept you up in most nights saying, I have to do something about this. And now you are doing something about it. So tell us, what were those small moves and which also led to these sparks of Shiksha Lokam and Mantra for Change?
So as I mentioned, higher education was not something of a norm for girls growing up in my family. And when I decided to take up engineering, and I was a good student. So for my mom, I think it was like, no, I should give the best opportunity. Whatever in her worldview was the best. And engineering degree definitely at that point in time offered at least that promise that my child will be able to go out, really take up a job, live a life of responsibility. My mom has always told me that it's not about the money that you make, but it's about the decisions in your life that you can take for yourself and for people that you care for. So I think just getting an opportunity to complete my engineering here in southern part of India helped me come across, just see the world from a very different lens. I mean, I had professors who were women. I had a dean who was a woman. And so seeing that women can actually do things differently and they can actually make decisions was a big, big learning for me, and such a great example to say, what else can I do? And so I think in the early stages of my engineering degree, or when I took up my first job as a software developer in Bangalore, in the vibrant city of Bangalore, and suddenly you see world from a very different lens, right? There are young people all around. There are people moving with, girls and boys are interacting with ease. And something just kept gnawing at me saying, hey, when I talk to my colleagues, they had so many opportunities growing up. And why is it that in the beginning, it was so much about why is it that I had to lose out on those. But I think very soon it turned into, there are so many more children like me who are still today losing out on those opportunities. Right. And that was the reason that I started in India, the corporates have this volunteering programs. I was working with Wipro at that point in time. So I joined Wipro Cares, which is a volunteering program. And that took me to so many beautiful nonprofits that were working on with children, with schools. And I think that each experience made the reflection very deep in my mind to say that, hey, I can do something more with my life. And that now that the opportunities that have opened up for me, I think I also have bigger responsibilities. Having said that, Ashwarya, no decision in life is easy. It's not that, when you have fought so hard for your freedom and suddenly you are in this place that where you're enjoying yourself, you're learning so much. And then saying, what else can I do? I think what helped me at that point in time was that I had a school friend then. Now he's my husband. So both of us coming from same place, obviously we started hanging out together, talking about the new world that we were both seeing, and just reflecting on some of these thoughts, new thoughts that were emerging in my mind in terms of, hey, maybe the life can have a deeper purpose. Maybe we can do things differently. So just having that, again, a partner, a person with whom you can engage in shared meaning making was very, very important in making those decisions about maybe it's time to quit the corporate world and start something new. And I think I must call out that at that point in time, I had no professional degree in education.
Right.
I had no idea how development sector works. I didn't know development sector as a phrase exists. So it was more about what can I do with my life to enable children who don't have those opportunities that maybe some of us have growing up.
Right.
So yeah, it started with that spark. And how we started Mantra in itself is a journey. It was 2009 when we decided, Santosh and I decided that we will do something in education. We had no idea what. So Santosh joined a Teach for India fellowship. He was from the first cohort, and I did for my master's in Tata Institute of Social Sciences, just to kind of explore and understand what the sector encompasses. And through the 2 years of his fellowship and my master's, we continued engaging with community, really working very closely with parents, interacting with these children. So I think that again gave us very real life experiences of what are the motivations, the aspirations of these people. And again, going back to the idea of, keep taking that baby steps. So we started working with them, started engaging with them, started saying, oh, which school are you going to? Can we go and visit your school? And seeing how school as an infrastructure, as a space is enabling or not enabling those experiences for the children. And from there, the idea of what can we transform existing schools came into being.
Right.
And that was the seed of Mantra for Change. Sure. We started Mantra for Change formally in 2013 to enable school transformation for the existing schools in the country.
How do you kind of identify your own champions?
I mean, when you see that you as a person have to take charge of your life, your decisions, there's so much of independence woven into that. And then you feel like, I'm the sole keeper of my life and I have to control it. Right. Versus this other side, that if you have to grow in life, you have to really enable a lot of things, you have to trust other people around you.
Yes.
And again, going back to my life experiences, within the home, my mother, but then she couldn't have done things alone.
Right.
Right? Because there are very hard and fast societal norms that she had to fight. So she also needed a champion. I had an uncle who really at that point in time said, I will go with her to make sure that she gets admitted into the engineering college. Right. Then when we started Mantra for Change, what did we know about education?
Right.
So then reaching out to say, who else is there who knows about education?
Right.
And in the beginning, say we went to, in the early days of Mantra for Change, we went to these professors of education in Azim Premji University, and they were such a big support. But in the beginning, when we approached them, why should they trust us? So here are these two young people who were like, we are engineers, we have been working, and now we are here to work in education. So that trust building, just letting people know what is the intention with which we are coming. Putting your intent out there really helps in building trust. And it's not that trust gets built in one day. So to your point, it's a constant effort to show up, to engage with people, to talk to them, to say, this is why we are coming. And making the intention very, very authentically out there has helped us to get champions, helped people believe in us and contribute in the way that they saw was fitting the mission or our personal needs at that point in time.
Right.
And our life is full of such examples, right? From these professors from Azim Premji University to Sanjay Purohit himself, who we met in 2013, which is baby starting Mantra for Change. And here is this, person who has this horse of gyan and wisdom. Right. And what would incentivize him to spend time with us?
Correct.
Right? But it was all about showing up and talking to people, investing time in really knowing each other as person and authentically talking about why you're doing what you're doing. That has helped. And that is helping us even till date when we are shaping Shikshagar as the movement, when we are designing with other social entrepreneurs saying, why should they change their way or modify their way of working to fit into this larger story of solving for education equity together. So building trust, showing up, and being patient with people is very important.
Khushbu, I've been hearing about Shiksha Lokam since 2018-19 because I have a very close friend there. And what intrigued me then was the +1 thinking. Yeah. And now that I'm part of the ecosystem, I'm just inspired to see how it has been transforming, and especially with micro improvements. And whenever I hear that Atomic Habits come in, and I've seen you talk about those smaller steps that can lead the way, right? So could you give us a little insight about what Shiksha Lokam does, and just double click on how micro improvements actually catalyze exponential change into the system, into the education system that we are talking about?
So Shiksha Lokam was, it's a milestone that's very close to my heart as an organization, as a mission, and how it came to be. So it was 5 years of Mantra for Change. 2017 was the year when we had just completed 5 years of Mantra for Change. We were working with around 50 schools in and around Bangalore. Amazing set of results because it was a small team, really going to the school, working with the school principal, helping improve the school as an organization. And Mr. Shibulal, who is one of the co-founders and former CEOs of Infosys, he's been a great supporter of our work. And we were again fortunate to have found him in 2015. So Sanjay Purohit, Shibu sir, Kumari ma'am, Kumari Shibulal, they were on our advisory board at that point in time. And we were presenting what we have achieved in 5 years and now what's our game plan for the next 5 years. And we said we are working in 50 schools. In the next 5 years, we want to go to 1,000 schools.
Lovely.
Inspiring, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We presented that and Sanjay sir comes in. Do you want to grow the organization or do you want to scale the idea? Santosh and I are on the other side of the table and we have no clue what growth and scale means or how are they different.
Yeah.
And we said, interesting. We'll go back, think about it. And he said, no, why 1,000 schools? Why not 10,000 schools? Why not 50,000 schools?
Right.
And that was the sole feedback that we took away from that advisory review meeting. And then obviously, I mean, a great mentor doesn't just ask questions. He or she engages with you to help you find answers. And that's what Sanjay sir did. We went back to the drawing board and, the whole idea today, what we talk about in societal thinking is that scale is not about what you can do. Scale is about the size of the problem.
Yeah.
And I think that was the genesis of Shiksha Lokam, where we said, what is the size of the problem? And we said, if India as a country has 1.5 million schools, what would it take to transform those 1.5 million schools so that all children in the country get access to enabling learning experiences? And the moment we arrived at that question, when we came to term with that imagination or that lens of the things, we said, maybe how we are doing things with mantra will not suffice. And hence a new way of thinking.
Yeah.
And saying, what would it take to actually enable this? And your entire societal model came into life with Shiksha Lokam. We said we have to build an infrastructure that will enable these key interactions that we are able to drive through mantra in these schools.
Right.
How a teacher is talking to a student, how a principal is talking to a teacher. So what could that shared capability look like? We need more mantras.
Yeah.
It's the second order question, right? Like one mantra will never be able to do it in their lifetime.
Correct.
Or one Khushbu or one Santosh will not be able to do it. So how do we find more such organizations, bring them onto a common co-creation ecosystem where people are able to exchange ideas, build upon each other? Sid has developed something, Ashirya has built something. How do I get access to it so that I can build on top of each other rather than again building from scratch?
Right.
And last and not the least, when you're talking about India, 1 million schools are public schools. They are being run by government. So how do we engage with government as a partner?
Yeah.
Right.
Rather than someone who is just giving us permission to work in schools.
Yeah.
So that was the whole idea of your societal network, saying government as a key actor, others, non-profits in the country, other community-based organizations. How do we start working with them so that this whole mission of transforming 1.5 million school it even looks feasible?
Right.
And that's how Shiksha Lokam started. It's very interesting that initially when we were conceptualizing Shiksha Lokam, by the way, Shiksha Lokam is an education system leadership development mission. The whole idea is how do you develop leadership among actors in the system? And the first instinct that we had was, okay, we'll set up this physical institute where people will come, attend courses, really become better leaders. They will go back and transform their schools.
Yeah.
And then when this whole scale thinking, this size of the problem, the scale, speed, and sustainability as three lenses when we started applying to our work, we realized how infeasible. I mean, that is something that we shouldn't even spend our time on, right?
Yeah.
And that's why the alternate way of thinking, Shiksha Lokam was born as a societal mission. I think 2017 was the year when Sanjay sir was still kind of working on, the XT Foundation was working on what this framework would look like. And I feel a lot of joy, a lot of pride in saying that Shiksha Lokam was one of those first missions that actually was born with societal thinking.
Yeah. So you spoke of this adaptability, and I'm seeing this play a very crucial role in the next gen leaders that you are primarily working with, Khushbu. And it's also a crucial part that you play where you are enabling education leadership as well, right? So my question to you is, I read this also somewhere in a blog where you spoke of leading is like living in Goa, which is quite interesting. I'm like, okay, what's behind this there?
Especially when you did your leaders lab.
Yes. So I'm curious to know how did this analogy come to you? What led you to pen down those thoughts? And I know some of the influences were the leaders that surrounded you at that time, or the ones who took up the leadership roles. So just break it down for us. And in your role as a leader as well, what are some of the challenges that you have faced, and how did you even tackle them?
I think that was before COVID.
Yeah.
So there was this one senior team member, one of our leadership team members, who had just joined us. And before coming to Bangalore, he was living in Goa. But it was one of those conversations. They
Yeah.
said, yeah. I mean, I said, wow, living in Goa, that must be fun. And then, as someone who has lived there, started calling out how people won't show up if you have a plumbing issue till
Oh.
1 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's, there are pro and cons of every
Yeah.
decision. Yeah. And I think already as so I have always worked as someone who identifies a leadership team, who nurtures a leadership team, whether it's Mantra or Shiksha Lokam or any initiative that I'm part of. There's nothing that is solely dependent on me.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's been just a way of working that comes very naturally to me. And you talked about young leaders. When you have these young team members who have started playing these leadership roles,
Yeah.
or who have started demonstrating leadership, obviously that means there are things that you don't feel ready for. You start feeling nervous about certain decisions, or you may feel certain bottlenecks where some team member is not maybe listening to you, or some government stakeholder, because when you're dealing with different kind of actors, there are different incentives, different power dynamics, and mostly power dynamics don't work in favor of those who are young.
Right.
So a lot of these discussions come up in my one-on-one with my team members. And I think that's why that analogy sat so well and in my head, that ultimately everything is a choice. Every decision we make is a choice.
Yeah.
I have always maintained that decisions are neither wrong nor right. You have to make them right.
Yeah.
That means you have to come back and decide again and again that is why I made this choice. And that's why I have to do things to make that decision, right? As a way of working, as Shiksha Lokam's way of working, we said we have to work with different partners. Now, aligning partners takes a lot of time. We spoke about patience earlier. I mean, it sounds like such a small word, but in daily life, it takes a lot of toll on me. It's like, when you go in a multi-party meeting, there are like 10 NGO leaders and each one is equally passionate. Otherwise, why would have they started this, right?
Yeah.
And then bringing people onto the same page, enabling those shared meaning making, it takes a lot of time. And sometimes people will come with very strong point of view. And then you question yourself, like, why am I even doing this? Is it required? Because people ask you questions, like, I could have done this, no?
Right.
So then your first instinct is always like, it's okay. Let's just put it aside. But then you come back and you say, no. We chose to design Shiksha Lokam in this way because
Right.
scale was the goal, speed was the goal, sustainability was the goal. So now go back on that designing table, and then again come back and invest time in those trust building exercises. And I think a similar example that I would like to call out here is, especially when you work with government stakeholders, when you enter into a development sector, you always say, I want to change the life of this child. I want to really enable experiences for this woman, or whatever your mission is. And that is very gratifying when that person's life is changed and they come back to you and say, you did this for me. Thank you so much. Now, in Shiksha Lokam's way of doing, you are actually getting that child's learning experiences changed while working with government actors. And they may not always have the same incentives as me. So those conversations, sometimes they appear very resistant because of their worldviews. They'll say, why should I trust you? What do you know? Have you studied education? Like, I've been into meeting rooms where people said, you have not studied education. Why are you working in education?
Right.
True.
So, and those meetings, those interactions really like put you at the back foot and say, oh God, is this why I came into the sector? Is this why I started Mantra for Change Shiksha Lokam? But then, I mean, ultimately it's about coming back, reflecting and saying, this is why I started, and hence I have to go back to that IS officer, go back again and engage and spend time. So and that moment is never easy, but
It has to be done.
it has to be done, and it has to be developed as a practice. And I think after having done for so many years, now it starts coming naturally. But for younger team members, other young social entrepreneurs, it's always, so these are the experiences that I share, saying, it's okay. It's okay. Things will get better. And your hairs will start turning gray, and then people will take you far more seriously. That's on the lighter note. But yes, I think it's very important, some of these things, especially when you're working as a system orchestrator, when you know that you're no more into the act of doing, you're not directly engaging with that child, but you're engaging with so many actors and trying to align them so that all of us can work together for that child's learning experience.
Probably. We're going to play Dictionary.
Oh my God.
Who wants to go first?
I can start.
Yeah. Won't read it out.
I'm gonna show the
School. Okay, Vibhu, you can go next.
Okay.
the exponential change on those lines. Network. No.
Network effects.
No, can't be. There's a murmuration. Oh, okay.
What are the models of exponential change?
Not choral.
Fractal.
I've heard you say this quite a bit in some of the conversations that agency is truly about letting go of control. You've been in this ecosystem longer than all of us. I wanted to understand how has being a part of this ecosystem, being a part of this journey, shaped you as a leader in terms of your beliefs, how you have thought of strategies and how you've thought of things. And just give us an understanding of what has it been to be a part of this.
So many things at so many levels. I think this whole coming across with the societal thinking. I mean, you have these 3 books here, right? Like, it's full of wisdom. I think my journey would have never been the same. Or today, I would not be doing what I'm doing had it not been for the provocations that were offered by societal thinking. And so many mindset shifts. Like, as an entrepreneur, as when you begin, and my journey was no different. Like, anybody who's just, when you start your entrepreneurship journey, you're like, I'm going to change the world. This problem was not solved because I was not solving it. But then you realize the complexity of challenge, and it comes to you in phases. The more audacious your goals start becoming, the more challenges you start facing, because then you're seeing the ecosystem in its entirety. So for us, I think the whole idea of how do you design a program, how do you even conceptualize an intervention, changed because of societal thinking. Typically, when you design, you're like, okay, these are the outcomes I'm trying to achieve, so these are the activities I'll do. That outcome itself got questioned when we applied the societal thinking to it. You spoke of agency. Sid spoke. Sid drew.
Right.
So I think just if you are saying that I am not, as a social entrepreneur, I'm not going to change the learning experience of the child. I'm going to enable the school leader or the teacher so that they can enable it for the child. In itself is a mindset shift. And hence, it has a ripple effect. Then your way of designing your intervention also changes. Why I said Shiksha Lokam is a leadership development mission? Because yes, all of us working in education are ultimately working for children. But all my program activities today are directed towards how do I enable this school principal, this teacher, so that they can identify, they can sense what is it that is hindering the learning experience of the children.
Right.
How do they learn on the go to say, how do I solve it? And then they actually improve it. Ashara, you spoke about micro improvements earlier. I mean, just arriving at the idea of micro improvement was an aha moment for us. One of these books, I think it is in Think Scale, that says it is simplicity that scales.
Yes.
Yeah. Typically, as in early stage of program design, when we start, we have so many these interlinkages. Oh, this will happen, then I will do this, then this. So it's a really complex design, or if not complex, at least complicated designs that we start with. But and leadership development was one such idea. When we said we have to nurture leadership in the ecosystem, in the education ecosystem, we started defining these leadership development frameworks. We were very close to actually putting something as complicated as the Harvard School will put.
Yeah.
Right? There are these 5 domains, there are these subdomains. One needs to have the idea of how do you deal with challenges, how do you do budgeting, to so many things. We said it's all its entirety is never going to scale. And then we will always be stuck at the debate saying, is this the right trait to build or the something else? And so just unbundling, saying what is leadership? And we came around this idea of improvement, saying ultimately anybody who is able to drive continuous improvement in their context is a leader.
Nice.
And to be able to do effective improvements, better improvements, all you need is to be able to sense better, to be able to make sense better, and to be able to learn on the go. And this has been the core philosophy of Shiksha Lokam. And this was one of the mindset shifts to say, leadership is not about yes, it is about all this complexity, but it can actually manifest itself in the most simplest of forms by somebody having the agency to drive continuous improvement, right? That ownership. I think second big mindset shift for us was the whole co-creation layer that we spoke about earlier, right? I will have all the solution versus I really have to bring together people who will solve this together, who will co-create solution. So in societal thinking, we always talk about distributing the ability to solve.
Yes.
And what is it that one has to do to distribute that ability to solve or to enable that ability to solve for others? And this was a big mindset shift because that means all the micro improvements will not come from Shiksha. All the micro improvements will not come from Mantra. But so many other people have to, in the ecosystem, have to come together to design their own micro improvements.
Right.
School principals have to design their own micro improvements. And that was a huge mindset shift again. I think there's so many Ashcharya. I mean, my laundry list is here. But one thing that I really want to share, and this I keep talking to my team also, no matter how many years, because you said I've been longest in sector, is to continue to operate with beginner's mindset.
Yeah.
You may know a lot of things, but again, when you face a new challenge, just opening up and saying, I don't know what I don't know. And it helps you really come up with very innovative solutions and come up with new pathways. And that is very important. So one of the mindset shifts that I always keep like a mantra to me, saying, am I operating with a beginner's mindset or am I going with a know-it-all kind of attitude?
Mindset. Yeah.
And that has really been helping me.
So, at C4EC, we always talk about voices and people who talk about at least the values and what C4EC is really about, right? And you're probably one of the loudest. Not probably, you are the loudest. So I wanted to understand, going back a little bit into the books for a second, how much of that has really shaped you? And I feel like there is so much of it when you speak so passionately about this, right? And now that you're in part involved with C4EC a little bit, I mean, how much of it does translate back into the work that you try to do here as well?
100%. When you say I'm nobody in my life has told me I'm the loudest in the room or about anything. But yes, I think when it comes to societal thinking principles, just it's a set of guiding values and principles, right? I am the most ardent supporter and believer because I've lived through the journey.
Right.
I already described, we were doing things a certain way with Mantra for Change. Then when this question of, first and foremost, the whole idea that we can actually put a goal as audacious as popular as country scale was itself unthinkable.
Correct.
It only became possible because the simple thing that scale is not about what you do with your resources, but it is about the size of the problem.
Right.
Now it's not about me, right? It's about the size of the problem. So I can actually very dispassionately put that problem statement on the table. That itself happened because of societal thinking. Now that you put it out there, then there are a set of design principles that guiding me to say it's not just a wish, it's not a dream, it is a dream. Everything starts with a dream.
Yes.
But it's not something that you put out and then pray for it. You could do something about it. And then design principles of societal thinking actually give you a lot of confidence that this can be done.
Right.
So whether it is about distributing the ability to solve, which we already spoke about, whether it is about how do you catalyze interactions. We spoke about patience, we spoke about trust.
Yeah.
Catalyzing interaction is all about these two.
Correct.
If people don't trust you, they will not interact.
All right.
So how do you enable trust at scale? So yes, I mean, for me, every single decision in the journey of Shiksha Lokam or shaping Shikshagraha now as the movement has been deeply guided by societal thinking values. And the reason I'm again now here at C4, at Center for Exponential Change, is because when you are looking at problem statements in the context of other missions, it trigger ideas and inspiration that you can actually take back to your work.
Correct. Yep.
Otherwise, you're always like this, right? How do you develop beginner's mindset? When you're always in the education domain, for me, when I'm in the education domain, no matter what I do, I say, yeah, I've seen this. Yes, I know this. But the moment I start applying these principles in the context of a new journey partner, it's like, oh, they are thinking like this. I should also be thinking like this.
Right.
Or when you see somebody else experiencing it, your inspiration, and at least for me, it really triggers a lot of inspiration and creativity in my mind.
So you were talking about unlearning, and you also spoke of especially leaders like you who are looking to tackle the scale of the problem, and you have to work with a lot of stakeholders who are in the Samaj Sarkar and Bazaar that we commonly term as, which means a lot of conflicts. There's a lot of unlearning, letting go in some sense, and conflicts with varied opinions, thought processes. And I heard this interview somewhere where your husband, co-founder, Santosh More, and when you two have conflicts amongst the two of you, he's the first one to apologize. You're like, he has all reasons to apologize.
Not sure which year that interview.
Or has that changed since?
Now has become equal.
So that's a great conflict resolution method that you have up your sleeve. But when we come into reality of you moving from a social entrepreneur and now moving into the direction of a system orchestrator, and you have different actors that you had to work with. So what has conflict resolution, or how do you work around with conflict at that point? And how do you leverage the network to step up towards the idea, to bring the ecosystem together, to work towards that student that you are talking about?
That's a very layered question.
Yeah.
It is.
I can whichever way you want to take first.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the whole idea of conflict.
Yeah.
Like when we already spoke about diversity of actors.
Yeah.
There's government. There's non-profits. There are individuals. There are funding organizations. And there are the actual school leaders and teachers who are part of the system. And everybody has different incentives. Everybody has same purpose. Because when you are in the business of building trust, you don't doubt the intent.
Right.
So yes, everybody has different incentives. They may have their own worldviews. They may have their own experiences. And there will be some sort of power dynamics.
Correct.
Right? So conflicts are bound to come. So that is something that it's not a surprise. We design for it. Yes, conflicts will be there and we have to find our way around the conflicts. I think one big mindset shift, Ashaya, that has been integral to our own journey as entrepreneurs like sometimes you don't have to find a solution. You are not the only one to bring the solution to the table. So about these conflicts, now that I'm slightly more experienced than I was before, I think the thing that has helped is just holding those spaces, taking each conflict as an opportunity to create a space where diverse actors come together. They share what they are not aligned with.
Right.
And then again, unbundling to say what is the real question that is sitting with them, which is not helping them open up and contribute in the best way possible. And those spaces have really helped. So and especially when you are in the whole act of bringing the ecosystem together, sometimes we undermine the power of these spaces. Like 3 of us sitting here and talking about, we now know each other slightly better than what we knew an hour before.
Right.
So those spaces are very powerful. When people come together, and your work, Ashwarya, in Leaders Lab is about bringing people together. I think in our work at Shiksha Lokam, that's part of our job, where we bring diverse actors together to just come together, call out. And also people have to feel safe to be able to articulate what they're not comfortable with.
Right.
So I think conflict resolution, the best thing that has worked for us is just bringing people together. When they connect with each other as people, when they build trust, they're far more open to actually call out what is the real problem that they're facing, that they are struggling with. And then the community finds the solution. I don't have to offer a solution.
Right.
I don't have to resolve the conflict. I have to just create a space where conflict will get resolved.
Right.
Shipped. Yeah. And these are things that we do almost every day at Shiksha Lokam, whether inside or outside with NGOs or with government actors or with diverse actors. The second part of your question was the network. How do we
to step up?
Yeah, I think that is so much to do with role modeling.
Yeah.
When I would have never imagined during my childhood that I could be an entrepreneur.
Right.
Like I said, nobody in my family is an entrepreneur. I've never seen somebody like that. But when you start seeing those kind of people around you, you're like, oh, not that difficult,
Right.
It's imaginable. I can also do it. So I think in the network, it's so much about, again, different partners are there and they see us playing that role. And then all I have to do is to say, hey, do you want to do this the next time? Do you think you can do it in your context? For example, I'll take the example of Vidya Vidai, who's It's an organization based in Tamil Nadu, and they've been associated with us since 2017. Ram and Regila are dear friends, very amazing social entrepreneurs. And we were talking to them about Shikshagra, and we said, we are doing this across India, and what would it take for Vidya Viday to play that role for Tamil Nadu as an ecosystem?
Right.
Would you be able to identify more social entrepreneurs within the districts of Tamil Nadu and then enable this kind of support structure for them? And they said, yeah, it's feasible, it's doable. Yeah, I know that person. And so, when people know, it can't be all a black box for people to be able to take the first step. But the moment you start showing them that this is the pathway, this is the step-by-step guidance, at least to some extent, people are ready to rise up.
The local
And it's happening, and it's happening so beautifully in Shikshagra. And there is just one such example.
Interesting.
We spoke of Shikshagra. If you want to tell the audience what it is, that'll be super helpful, just in like a liner, so everyone understands what's the next big thing for Shiksha Lokam.
Okay. Shikshagra is a movement. It's a people's movement. The core idea was that if for the freedom of the country, people could come together and shape Satyagraha. Education equity as a challenge, inequity as a challenge has existed in our country for more than 70 years now. If it is such a complex challenge, what would it take for people to come together and really solve it? And that's why Shikshagra. Shikshagra is conceptualized as a movement. It is not one program. Shikshagra is not Shiksha Lokam. Shikshagra is not Mantra for Change. It is everybody.
One question that I have, when you speak of, constantly being able to evolve, and every time you hit I won't call it a roadblock. I think it's a milestone that you hit and then say, then there's a fork in the road and say, maybe this way, right? And then somebody is there to say, yes, this way works. So how important do you think as a leader, somebody who's had the helm of affairs, is so important to kind of take a step back and say, maybe it is right to take this decision, and adaptability, being able to pivot? And how much of that and from the conversations that you've kind of, when you were introducing yourself, I also felt that there's so much of the ability to pivot that was built into you, right? From the beginning.
I think it's not easy. It's something that requires
it's not easy at all.
A lot of practice. But the moment you are on this journey, you realize that there's just no other way.
Right.
There are challenges outside your control that will come in your way. And then you have to have, as long as you're clear on the goal, as long as you're clear on the purpose, you have to find the other way. What are the possible pathways? And that's why I always use the word possible pathways, because I may have planned something amazing on a paper. And the moment it hits the real world, you know that you will not, things will change.
Yeah.
Government may change in our work. And your partner can suddenly become, for whatever reason, they can go dormant. Or some policy would come. Or some funder would say, hey, right now I'm not going to fund this particular project. Then what do you do? Right? Some team member may fall sick.
Right.
It can be as tiny as
that,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think there's no size to
absolutely.
these abilities or these traits, but one has to keep practicing it. These are uncomfortable. Obviously, at that point in time, you feel like, oh no, why did this happen? Why did this happen? This had to happen now.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have had so many examples where it looked so simple, like a state level program would just go live. And then suddenly you get a call that, hey, the bureaucrat that you were engaging with, that you have spent like last 3 months to build this relationship and really get ready to sign the MOU, and the bureaucrat got transferred.
Oh my gosh.
But then you're the star.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, obviously it's frustrating, but as long as it needs to be done, then it needs to be done.
Khushbu, we've heard your journey, and it has a lot to do with a champion who's able to enable your agency, dignity, and choice at different points. So there are many, many Khushbus out there, young Khushbus. What would your one message to that young Khushbu be? This is the first question, then I'll move into the second.
Okay. When you say young Khushbus, I'm assuming it's also the girls out there.
Yes.
Yes, sometimes life appears very bleak, full of challenges. But just believing that you have that potential. The power is already inside. It just needs to be unleashed. And what can help unleash that is don't give up. Keep making small choices for yourselves. Because like Sid was saying, it's all a muscle. When you keep Even if it's about who am I going to visit, who am I going to talk to, it can be as simple as that. But those small choices really help build that muscle to say, start believing in yourself that yes, I have the power to make a choice, I have voice. And the core idea that, again, all of us keep talking about, the idea of agency, that's already there. We will be able to unleash it, restore it, if we practice it. And second, we will find, if we are able to look out for champions who are around us and seek them out and ask for help. Being powerful doesn't mean we don't ask for help. You have to always ask for help. So, yeah.
And to all the young entrepreneurs who are out there, mostly the social entrepreneurs who are in that stress of how do I manage all of this? If you could give 2 tips, actionable tips that'll help them.
One, I think, again, going back to what I have learned through my immersion in societal thinking, don't build for people, build with them. Whosoever you're working for, don't have a pre-baked solution that is designed with a lot of body of knowledge and with a lot of expertise to say, this is what will solve your problem. How do we take the ingredients and really ask people to also bring ingredients, their experiences, their worldviews, and then build with them? Second, I think trust. There are other people around us who also care for that issue. And it always helps to trust people and build them, bring them into the community. So if we were to prioritize between taking a solution or implementing a solution versus building a community, having experienced all this, I would always first prioritize building a community. Solutions will emerge, problems will get solved. Only when like-minded people come together. These two.
I always find it interesting to ask, let's assume you're sitting and doing this podcast again with us, and Shiksha Lokam and Shikshagraha and Mantra for Change have achieved everything that you set out to do.
Yet to, but yes.
Yes, yet to. But let's assume that you have.
Oh, okay.
And you're sitting after having achieved, I won't call it success, but mission accomplished. So what next? 2, what would that look like? What is that ideal scenario where everything kind of worked and you've done it?
I'm glad you asked what next. Because like I said, for us at Mantra or Shiksha Lokam, and now even with Shikshagraha, we are saying, how do we enable enriching learning experiences for children? Okay, for all children in the country. But just because you have had an enriching learning experience doesn't necessarily guarantee an opportunity to for your life opportunities and things like that. Right? So we are already thinking about how do we really create this bridge from learning experiences to opportunities in life. So that means when a child today graduates from class 12, right? What next? Because higher education, equal mess.
Yes, of course.
Right? Yeah. And then with AI and with how the world is changing around us, what does even life opportunities mean for these children in 2030 or in 2035?
Right.
We don't know. So instead of waiting for 2030 to come at the doorstep and then they'll say, okay, we'll start thinking, the thinking will begun.
Interesting.
So that's next.
Great. So it's a constant journey then.
It's a constant journey.
Lovely. Awesome. And just one final question. How do you kind of translate your long-term aspirations into goals and milestones? And of course, I think you just answered that a little bit.
Baby steps. Micro improvements.
Perfect. I was just going to end it at that. But one thing that I don't know whether if mythology serves me correctly, you're from Gaya. Right?
Yes.
And the fact that didn't Gautam achieve, it's amazing that you're in education post that. Like, it's just befitting. Absolutely. I think it was to be. That's somebody from, I mean, Bihar, one is the seat of all knowledge.
Yes.
Has been.
Yeah.
In historic, right? With Naladda and everything. But to have you champion education is something else.
And isn't it lucky that I don't even have to leave my family to be on this path of life?
No, absolutely. I mean, of course. But that said, it's not a question of your own enlightenment. You're enabling agency for others people to be enlightened as well.
And that's a privilege.
That absolutely is a privilege. So I'm glad that you're doing this and we're so happy to have done this. Thank you so much, Khushbu.
Thank you, Khushbu. It was a pleasure with the two of you.
Thank you, Kash.